The arrogant CEO mocked his assistant's looks until he saw her at the pool and lost control. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware filled the glass-walled conference room of Cole Industries. Sunlight spilled across the long marble table, catching reflections from crystal water glasses. Every executive sat straight, eyes on the towering man at the head of the table, Adrian Cole, the 32-year-old CEO known for his sharp suits and even sharper tongue. At the far end, Maya Nguyen hurried in, clutching a stack of printed reports to her chest. Her blouse was slightly wrinkled, her ponytail hastily tied. She whispered a quiet, "sorry," as she passed behind the executives to place the documents in front of Adrian. He did not look up right away. His voice was smooth, cool, and edged with arrogance. "Next time, Miss Nguyen, try not to look like you ran a marathon before a meeting." A few quiet chuckles rippled down the table. Maya froze. The heat rose to her cheeks. She wanted to vanish, but all she could do was straighten her back and murmur, "Yes, Mr. Cole." Adrian finally glanced up. His expression was unreadable, his gaze trailing briefly over her simple clothes before landing back on his laptop. "Details matter," he added, "even appearance, especially when you represent me." The room went silent. Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight. Inside, something cracked, a mix of humiliation and anger that burned behind her calm face. She returned to her corner, fingers trembling slightly as she gathered the leftover pages. When the meeting ended, she slipped out quietly, her pulse still pounding in her ears. The city heat hit her as soon as she stepped outside New York in early summer, heavy and alive. She walked fast, almost running to the small apartment she shared with her mother in Queens. By the time she reached the door, her blouse clung to her skin. She dropped her bag on the couch and leaned against the wall, exhaling shakily. On the kitchen table sat a chipped mug filled with wild daisies, her mother's small way of brightening the space. Her mother looked up from the couch, frail but smiling. "Rough day." Maya forced a grin. "Same old boss, same old drama." Her mother's smile faded a little. "You work so hard, honey. Do not let anyone make you feel small." Maya brushed a loose strand of hair from her face and nodded, but her eyes drifted toward the small silver hair clip lying beside her sketchbook, a family keepsake she rarely wore anymore. She picked it up, running her thumb along the worn metal. That clip had belonged to her mother back when she was a dance teacher before the illness. It had always made Maya feel elegant, confident, until Adrian Cole's words stripped that away this morning. She opened her sketchbook. Lines and colors filled the pages, city skylines, strangers on subways, the reflections of a life she wished she could live. Art had always been her escape, but tonight, it felt like her only voice. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. She turned to a blank page and began to draw the outline of a man standing alone by a pool, his reflection broken by the rippling water. Underneath it, she wrote in tiny script, "Dignity never depends on approval. There is Asteral Whirl." Maya did not know that the same pool she was sketching her imagined refuge would soon become the very place where Adrian Cole would see her again, and nothing between them would ever be the same. Call to action. CTA. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance or status, like this video and share it. Now, let us return to our main character, whose quiet strength is about to change everything. The next morning, Maya arrived at the office early. The city had barely woken up, and the soft gray light outside mirrored her mood. She placed a cup of black coffee on her desk, opened her computer, and tried to drown herself in work. Numbers, schedules, and emails, anything that could quiet the echo of Adrian's words from the day before, but they would not leave her alone. Details matter, even appearance. Every time she caught her reflection in the glass wall, the words replayed. It was not just an insult, it was a reminder of where she stood in his world background, noise in a room full of people who looked the part. Still, she worked hard. She always had. By noon, she had fixed 3 scheduling conflicts, rewritten 2 reports, and delivered a perfect presentation outline to the board. When she quietly slipped the folder onto Adrian's desk, he did not look up, only muttered, "Leave it there." She turned to go, but paused when she saw a photograph on his shelf, Adrian shaking hands with a famous architect at a charity event. He looked almost human in that photo, his smile genuine, but here in his glass tower, he was all steel and control. That evening, the office emptied one by one. The city lights flickered to life outside the windows, Maya stayed behind to finish the last set of notes for the upcoming company retreat, a luxury weekend at a coastal resort where the senior staff would relax, network, and build team morale. She was not invited, of course, but she had to prepare every document for it. As the elevator doors closed behind her later that night, she let out a long breath. On the subway ride home, she rested her forehead against the window, watching the reflection of her tired face blur with the streaks of passing lights. She whispered to herself, "One day, I will not just survive the week, I will live it." When she reached her apartment, her mother was already asleep. The small fan hummed in the corner, and the scent of chamomile tea still lingered in the air. Maya sat by the window, sketchbook in her lap, flipping through the pages. One drawing caught her eye, a sketch of the same pool she had drawn before, now surrounded by soft lantern light. She smiled faintly. Maybe someday she would see a place like that for real. She did not know that someday would come much sooner than she imagined. 2 days later, her supervisor called her into his office. "Maya," he said, glancing up from his computer, "we are short-staffed for the retreat. I need someone dependable to handle on-site logistics. You will be assisting the executive team." Her heart skipped. "You mean at the resort?" He nodded. "Pack light and look professional. You leave tomorrow morning." On her way home that night, Maya stopped by a small thrift boutique. She found a soft cream dress tucked behind a rack of worn blazers, simple, flowing, and elegant in a quiet way. It cost almost a full day's pay, but something inside her said it mattered. She bought it, folded it neatly, and slipped her silver hair clip beside it. The next morning, as her train sped along the coast, the city skyline faded behind her. Maya stared out the window, the ocean stretching endlessly on the horizon. She had no idea that fate was quietly preparing a second encounter, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about power, pride, and herself. And somewhere miles ahead, Adrian Cole was already waiting at the resort, unaware that the assistant he once mocked was about to change the course of his life. The resort stood on the edge of the ocean, all glass and stone, surrounded by palm trees bending in the wind. Maya stepped out of the shuttle with her clipboard pressed tightly to her chest, trying to look composed while her heart raced. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. Behind her, other employees hurried with suitcases and boxes of materials. She reminded herself she was here to work, not to stand out. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed: marble floors, cascading chandeliers, and walls lined with gold-framed mirrors. Maya signed the check-in sheet and carried the guest folders to the reception desk. She was leaning over the counter when she heard a voice she recognized immediately. "Is the suite ready?" Adrian Cole stood a few steps away, wearing a dark suit even under the afternoon sun. He was speaking to the hotel manager, his tone calm but commanding. When his eyes swept across the lobby, they landed briefly on her. For a split second, he hesitated. Maya looked different, her hair loose around her shoulders, a soft cream dress replacing the stiff office wear. She looked radiant. But before recognition could surface, she looked away first, pretending to be focused on her clipboard. The rest of the day blurred with tasks: checking schedules, coordinating transport, arranging last-minute details. Maya kept her head down, determined not to draw attention. Yet, every time Adrian passed by, she felt the weight of his gaze linger for a moment longer than it should. That evening, the executives gathered for a welcome dinner by the terrace. Maya stood off to the side, adjusting the seating chart. The glow of lanterns reflected across the pool. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Adrian arrived late, his sleeves rolled up, looking less like the untouchable CEO and more like a man finally exhaling after a long week. When his assistant from headquarters approached him with a missing document, Maya stepped forward to help. "I have a copy, sir," she said quietly, handing it over. Adrian looked at her fully this time. "You are part of the support team?" "Yes, Mr. Cole," she replied, her voice steady. He studied her face for a moment. Something about her calm tone and the soft confidence in her eyes unsettled him. He nodded slightly, then returned to the table. But for the first time in a long while, his attention wandered from the deals being discussed to the quiet girl who worked in the shadows. Later that night, after the guests had left, Maya walked by the poolside to double-check the setup for tomorrow's event. The water shimmered under the moonlight, perfectly still. She crouched near the edge to fix a loose ribbon, unaware that someone else was there. Adrian stepped out from the terrace, phone in hand. He froze when he saw her reflection on the water, the same calm posture, the same silver hair clip glinting softly under the lights. Something inside him shifted, a recognition he could not explain. Maya stood, turning toward him. "I was just finishing up," she said, her tone polite but distant. Adrian nodded. "You are thorough. Most people would have left this to the morning." "Details matter," she replied, the faintest trace of irony in her voice. He blinked, remembering his own words from that humiliating meeting. She met his eyes briefly, then gathered her clipboard and walked away, leaving him standing by the pool with the strange feeling that he had just been humbled without a single insult. That night, Adrian Cole did not sleep easily. For the first time in years, his thoughts were not about profit margins or board meetings. They were about a quiet assistant who had faced his arrogance and carried herself with dignity anyway. And by the time the sun rose, he knew one thing: he wanted to see her again. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the resort patio, scattering gold over the water. Maya was already awake, reviewing notes and arranging name tags for the morning session. She moved quietly, blending into the rhythm of staff members preparing for the executive's breakfast. Her focus was calm, professional, but deep down, she still felt uneasy. The memory of Adrian standing by the pool last night kept replaying in her mind. When he arrived, she was fixing a stack of folders. Adrian paused near the table, coffee in hand. "Morning," he said simply. It was not his usual sharp tone, just one word, almost gentle. Maya looked up. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." He hesitated. "You were still working after midnight yesterday." "I wanted everything to be ready before the event started," she answered without looking up. For a brief moment, he watched her with something that looked dangerously close to admiration. "You take your job seriously," he said. She gave a small smile. "Someone has to." That answer lingered with him as the meeting began. Through the morning sessions, Adrian found himself distracted. He had built an empire by demanding perfection from everyone. But this woman, this assistant, he had once humiliated, carried a kind of quiet perfection that could not be bought or taught. By noon, the executives broke for lunch. Maya stood near the buffet table, helping the catering staff reset the dishes. Adrian walked over, loosening his tie. "You should sit and eat something," he said. "I am fine, thank you." "You say that a lot," he replied, half amused. Maya turned to him, slightly surprised by his tone. Old habit. He looked like he wanted to say more, but the head of marketing interrupted, and the moment passed. Still, for the rest of the afternoon, he kept noticing her, how she spoke with staff respectfully, how she stayed calm even when problems arose. Every small act of grace contradicted the shallow judgment he had made of her before. That evening, as the conference day ended, the resort staff began setting up lights for the gala by the pool. Maya stayed to oversee the details, checking cables, testing sound levels, ensuring the floral arrangements were balanced. The reflection of lanterns danced across the water. She crouched to adjust a centerpiece when she heard Adrian's voice behind her. "You never stop working, do you?" She straightened up. "Events like this do not run themselves. It means he have un mile grain time," in Reddy said, "in class and in trader." He stepped closer, the glow from the lanterns softening the edges of his face. "You surprise me, Miss Nguyen." She crossed her arms lightly. "Because I can do my job?" "No," he said quietly. "Because I misjudged you." The honesty in his tone startled her. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of waves filled the silence between them. Maya looked at him, unsure if she should believe the sincerity she heard in his voice. "People say a lot of things when they want to sound polite," she finally said. "I mean it," he insisted. "You are not what I thought." Her eyes met his, steady but guarded. "I was never trying to be." He smiled faintly, a trace of humility softening his features. "Then maybe that is why I cannot stop noticing you." The words hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. Maya took a small step back, her heartbeat quickening. "Good night, Mr. Cole," she said, keeping her voice calm. As she walked away, Adrian stayed by the pool, the sound of her footsteps fading behind him. The reflection of the lanterns trembled on the surface of the water, just like the steady control he prided himself on. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt completely unsteady, and it was because of her. The following day, the resort buzzed with preparations for the closing ceremony. Staff moved quickly across the terrace, balancing trays and adjusting lights. Maya worked quietly in the background, her clipboard tucked under her arm. The sea breeze brushed through her hair, carrying the faint scent of salt and orchids from the garden nearby. Adrian watched her from across the courtyard as he spoke with the head of operations. He could not explain why his attention kept drifting, why his mind wandered every time she entered the room. There was something grounding about the way she carried herself, calm, graceful, almost unaware of her own effect on the space around her. When the morning session ended, he found her reviewing paperwork by the balcony. "Miss Nguyen," he said, approaching with a careful tone. She looked up. "Yes, Mr. Cole? You have done more than what was asked this week. The event is flawless." "Thank you," she replied simply. He nodded, hesitating before speaking again. "There is a small dinner for the senior staff tonight. You should join us." She blinked, surprised. "I do not think I am on that list." "Consider yourself added," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Maya wanted to refuse, but his tone was different. This time, no arrogance, just quiet insistence. She agreed with a polite nod. "All right, I will be there." End quote. That evening, the dinner was set by the pool under strings of warm lights. The executives mingled over wine and laughter while soft jazz played in the background. Maya arrived late, wearing the cream dress she had bought from the thrift boutique. The silver hair clip glimmered softly against her dark hair. She looked effortless, almost luminous. Adrian was in mid-conversation when he saw her. The moment froze. The noise of the party dimmed in his mind. She walked toward the far side of the pool to help the catering staff, unaware that every head seemed to turn in her direction. He excused himself and followed, his heartbeat louder than the music. "You did not have to work tonight," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "I am more comfortable helping than sitting still, I can tell." His voice softened. "But tonight, you should just be here. It is rupee dead on the white." She looked up at him, the reflection of the lights dancing in her eyes. "Is that an order, Mr. Cole?" "For once," he said, "it is not." A breeze passed over the water, carrying the faint scent of orchids. The light shimmered across her face, and for the first time, Adrian saw her without the shadow of his own arrogance clouding the view. She was not the assistant he had mocked, not the quiet employee in the corner of a boardroom. She was someone entirely her own. The silence between them was fragile, charged. Maya felt it too, the invisible shift that words could not name. She stepped back slightly, breaking the spell. "I should check on the dessert setup," she said softly. Adrian let her go, his gaze following her reflection in the pool. His hand tightened around the glass he was holding. For the first time in his career, he did not know what to say or how to control what he felt. As the evening wound down, Maya stood by the pool once more, watching the lanterns flicker over the rippling water. Across the terrace, Adrian spoke with the investors, but his eyes found her again and again. He had spent his life mastering control, commanding boardrooms, shaping outcomes, yet standing there, watching her move through the golden light, he realized he was no longer in control of anything at all, least of all his own heart. The next night, the resort hosted the final gala of the retreat. The terrace glowed with golden light, and the sound of live music drifted through the humid evening air. Guests in elegant suits and sequin dresses mingled by the pool, their laughter rising above the steady rhythm of the waves beyond. Maya moved quietly among them, checking the guest list and confirming every last detail. She had told herself she would stay in the background. This night was for the executives and clients, not for her. But as she looked across the terrace, she could feel eyes following her. She knew who they belonged to. Adrian Cole stood near the bar, surrounded by board members, though his gaze kept finding her in every reflection of the glass doors. When she finally turned, their eyes met across the pool. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to send a tremor through both of them. Adrian set his drink down, excused himself from the conversation, and crossed the terrace toward her. "Maya," he said softly, stopping beside her. She blinked. He had never called her by her first name before. "Mr. Cole," she said, steady but cautious. "You should not be working tonight," he said. "You belong out there, not behind a clipboard." "I am fine where I am," she replied. "Someone has to keep things in order." He smiled faintly. "That someone does it better than anyone I know." Before she could answer, the host announced the presentation of sponsors and partners. The crowd gathered near the small stage. Maya stepped aside, watching as Adrian walked up to the microphone. He looked perfectly composed, confident as always. Yet when he glanced at her from the stage, there was a flicker of something unfamiliar. something warm. Tonight, he began, we celebrate the people who make excellence possible. Not just those with titles, but those who work behind the scenes quietly, tirelessly, with integrity. His voice steadied. People like Maya Nguyen, who has reminded us all that real grace has nothing to do with appearances and everything to do with heart. The crowd turned toward her, applauding. Maya froze, heat rushing to her cheeks. She wanted to disappear, but Adrian's gaze anchored her in place. It was not pity. It was admiration. When the applause faded, he stepped off the stage and approached her again. I meant every word, he said quietly. Maya searched his face for any trace of irony, but found none. That was unnecessary, Mr. Cole. It was overdue, he replied. For a moment, they stood in silence. Around them, the party continued, music, laughter, camera flashes, but the air between them felt separate, still. Maya looked toward the pool. The surface shimmered like liquid glass. You humiliated me once in front of a room full of people, she said softly. Now you praise me in front of a crowd. Is this your version of balance? Adrian shook his head. No, it is my version of regret. Her eyes softened, but she did not answer. She turned slightly, letting her gaze fall back to the water, where the lights rippled across the surface. You cannot undo the past with a speech, she said. I know, he replied, but I can start making it right. The music swelled behind them, and for the first time, Adrian Cole, once so sure of his place above everyone else, felt small in the best way possible. The arrogance had fallen away, leaving only the man beneath it, standing under the soft glow of the pool lights, finally seeing her clearly. And as Maya walked away into the night, her reflection trailing in the water beside his, he knew this was only the beginning of what he owed her. The following morning, the sky over the resort was a pale shade of blue, heavy with the promise of rain. The gala was over, and the guests were packing to leave. Staff moved quietly through the hallways, collecting leftover decorations and folded banners. Maya finished her last report at the reception desk, her name tag already tucked into her bag. She was ready to return to her life, to her small apartment, to the quiet rhythm she understood. But as she stepped outside, she found Adrian waiting near the entrance, leaning against the black company car. He looked different, no suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, a trace of exhaustion behind his composed face. Heading back to the city? He asked. She nodded. Yes. My train leaves in an hour. I can have the driver take you, he offered. That is not necessary, Mr. Cole. He gave a short, knowing smile. I figured you would say that. Maya glanced past him, toward the ocean that shimmered faintly under the cloudy light. The waves were soft, rhythmic, almost peaceful. It was a good event, she said after a moment. I am glad everything went smoothly. It did, he replied, because of you. She adjusted the strap of her bag. You do not have to keep saying that. 17Y, the spans, in great men. I am not saying it for you, he said quietly. I am saying it because I need to. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She looked at him, unsure what to say. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You have every reason to hate me. I was cruel, and I do not have an excuse. But when I saw you by the pool last night, he paused, searching for the right words. I realized I have spent years looking at people without ever really seeing them. Maya held his gaze, the silence between them thick with everything unspoken. You do not have to justify yourself to me, Mr. Cole, she said softly. People like us live in different worlds. You are the one who owns them. I am the one who works behind them. He shook his head. That is exactly what I want to change. A car horn sounded in the distance, breaking the moment. She turned slightly, the wind brushing against her hair. I should go, she said, her voice steady but quiet. Adrian took a step forward. Maya, she stopped him with a gentle raise of her hand. You once told me details matter, she said, her eyes calm but firm. You were right, but you never understood what kind of details matter most. He frowned slightly. Which ones? The ones that cannot be seen, she said. Kindness, respect, dignity. With that, she turned toward the path leading to the station, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. Adrian stood there, watching her walk away, the wind lifting strands of her hair. He wanted to call her name again, but something inside told him this moment was not for chasing, it was for learning. Rain began to fall, light and steady. The silver hair clip in her hair caught the last bit of sunlight before she disappeared around the corner. Adrian remained still, the sound of the rain mingling with the low crash of waves. For the first time, the man who had once commanded every room he entered felt truly powerless, and somehow, it felt right. Because power had never earned him respect, but humility just might. And as the car door closed behind him, one truth lingered in his chest like a quiet promise he was not done with Maya when. Not yet. A week later, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm honking taxis, hurried footsteps, and the hum of office towers reaching into the clouds. Maya sat at her small kitchen table in Queens, sorting through unpaid bills and sketching in the margins of her notebook. The silver hair clip rested beside her coffee mug, catching faint morning light. Life had returned to normal, or at least it looked that way. But inside, something was shifting. She could not stop replaying Adrian's voice from that morning by the resort gate. The honesty in it, the regret. She pushed the thought away and focused on her sketches. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Miss Nguyen? This is Lillian from Cole Industries," the voice said. "Mr. Cole has requested your presence at the company headquarters tomorrow morning. He said it concerns a new creative project." Maya hesitated, her pen frozen above the page. "A creative project?" "Yes, ma'am. He said it is something special." The next morning, she found herself standing in the gleaming lobby of Cole Industries once again. The glass walls stretched high above her, reflecting the city skyline. She took a slow breath before stepping into the elevator, her reflection merging with the rising lights. When the doors opened on the top floor, Adrian was waiting. He was not behind his desk this time. Instead, he stood near a large canvas covered with a black cloth. "Maya," he greeted softly. "Thank you for coming." She met his gaze carefully. "You said this was about a project?" "It is," he said, gesturing toward the covered frame. "Something I should have done long ago." He pulled the cloth away. Behind it hung a series of framed sketches, her sketches, the ones she had left in her desk drawer months ago. Each drawing captured the city in fragments of light and life, children chasing pigeons, subway artists, reflections in puddles after rain. At the center of the display was a title written in gold, "The Art of Everyday Grace." Maya's breath caught. "You kept these?" "I found them when we cleared the archives," he said. "They reminded me what real value looks like. So I made them the theme of our new campaign and the core of a foundation I want you to lead." She turned to him, stunned. "A foundation?" "For community art programs," he explained. "To give young artists the platform you never had. It is fully funded, and it will bear your name." Maya blinked, her throat tight. "Why would you do this?" "Because you were right," he said simply. "Kindness, respect, and dignity, those are the details that matter. You taught me that." The air hung heavy between them. Maya stepped closer to the sketches, running her hand along the frame. Her signature, once scrawled in pencil, now shone beneath the museum glass. "You did not have to make a spectacle out of it," she murmured. "It is not a spectacle," Adrian said. "It is an apology, and maybe a beginning." For the first time, she looked at him without anger. His expression was calm, almost humble. "People will talk," she said quietly. "Let them," he replied. "For once I am proud of what they will see." Maya exhaled slowly, emotions tangling inside her. Gratitude, disbelief, and something deeper she was not ready to name. She turned to face him. "If I say yes, I want full creative control." Adrian smiled, his voice soft but sure. "That was the plan all along." As she studied the sketches once more, Maya realized that the man who had once mocked her for not fitting his world was now rebuilding part of that world in her image. And for the first time, it felt like they were standing on equal ground. 6 months later, spring arrived early in New York. The city had thawed from its winter gray, and the air carried the faint scent of cherry blossoms drifting through the streets. Inside a converted gallery space in Soho, guests gathered for the grand opening of The Art of Everyday Grace, the first public exhibition of the foundation Maya now directed. The walls were lined with sketches, photographs, and community artworks from young local artists. Soft music played under the hum of conversation and camera flashes. Maya stood near the entrance, her silver hair clip glinting beneath the warm lights. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated, the same quiet confidence she had always carried. Every few minutes, someone approached to thank her or shake her hand. She smiled, kind but modest, directing all credit toward her team. Across the room, Adrian watched her with a look that was no longer distant or commanding. His arrogance had melted away, replaced by something steadier: admiration, respect, and a hint of awe. He had changed the company's focus in the past half-year, prioritizing mentorship and creative growth. But this night was not about him, it was about her. When the speeches ended, Adrian stepped up to the microphone. The room fell quiet. 6 months ago, he began, I thought success meant control over people, over outcomes, over how the world saw me. Then I met someone who showed me that leadership has nothing to do with control and everything to do with integrity. He paused, his eyes finding Maya across the crowd. Maya Nguyen, your work reminds us that grace is not weakness. It is strength, disguised as kindness. Applause filled the gallery. Maya's heart pounded as he stepped down from the stage and approached her. For a long moment they simply stood face to face, surrounded by the soft murmur of the crowd. You should be proud, he said quietly. I am, she replied, her voice steady. But so should you. You listened. He smiled, that rare, unguarded smile she had only seen once before by the pool months ago. You taught me how. There was a pause, gentle and full of unspoken history. Then Adrian reached into his pocket and held out a small velvet box. Inside was not jewelry, but the same silver hair clip, polished to shine like new. The clasp had been repaired, engraved now with tiny words. To the woman who changed the way I see. Maya's breath caught. You had it fixed. I wanted to return it the way it always should have been, he said softly. Whole. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with quiet emotion. Adrian, she whispered. You already did. The applause swelled again as photographers called her name for pictures, but the rest of the world faded. Adrian reached for her hand, not as her boss, not as a man trying to make amends, but as someone who finally understood what it meant to stand beside another person as equals. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Maya walked out onto the balcony overlooking the city. The streets below glowed with soft gold reflections. Adrian joined her, the night breeze brushing between them. He spoke first, voice low. Do you ever think about that morning in the conference room? Maya smiled faintly. Only to remind myself how far we both have come. He laughed quietly, his tone warm. Best mistake I ever made. She looked up at him, her eyes bright beneath the city lights. Then let us make sure it stays that way. These now is a watches. Worklu wait day p. And as the wind carried the sound of the city below, they stood together, two people who had once collided through pride and judgment, now bound by humility, respect, and something deeper. Because real love, like real grace, is never about status. It is about seeing and being seen completely.